Welcome back to Dr. Skull Games, and today I bring you a video focused on tips for your first chess tournament. I'm going to break this video down into three distinct categories: the pre-tournament preparation that you can do ahead of time, tips for how you should support yourself during a tournament, and then a third section basically answering those etiquette questions that a lot of people have. Now, I understand that for a lot of people, going to your first chess tournament can seem like kind of an overwhelming, scary experience. I could just stay in my house and I could play online, but I can assure you they're a lot of fun, and hopefully these tips will help you get out there and do it. So, my first tip is simply this: just do it. Just get out and enjoy the tournament. They are a lot of fun. They're a great part of the chess journey. I've heard a lot of people say, well, when my online rating reaches X, or then I'll do it, or I don't know, my opening has some holes in it. Well, I've got bad news. Your rating is never going to feel high enough. Your opening will always have holes in it. There will always be reasons not to go, but trust me, going will be worth it. And I think closely connected to this is my next tip, which is don't have high expectations going in as far as winning. Enter the tournament looking to get experience both in how to play over the board chess and improve your journey. What this means is it's really likely you're going to play many hundreds of points lower than your online rating. That doesn't mean online ratings are necessarily that inflated. What it means is it's a big adjustment. It's a huge adjustment from just sitting in your home playing online versus all of the distractions and all of the stimuli of an in-person tournament. But I think you'll find in the end that it is well worth it. Okay, some other pre-tournament prep is deciding what section and time control you're going to play in. This can be really confusing as tournaments, you would expect it's like a one sentence thing, but it's paragraphs and paragraphs, as it's like the 2-day, the 3-day, the 8-day. Bottom line is it comes down to this: do you want to play all of your games at the same time control or not? So an example might be this: a tournament offers a 3-day tournament, but they understand that some people are busy and can maybe only make it 2 days. So what they'll do is they'll say you can play either all 3 days at the classical time control that we're offering, or you can play 2 days, and the first day will mostly be faster games. You'll play more games to kind of catch up. So the answer to which one you should play in really is up to you. Are you the kind of person that likes faster time controls? If so, maybe that's a good way to get into the tournament. Are you on the older side like myself, and playing 4 to 5 games in a day doesn't sound like a great use of your energy? For me, what I personally do is I always play the short amount of games. And sometimes that means I have to take a bye the first day and miss it. This is something you'll need to figure out, but it's just some advice to understand how it works. Another big piece of advice is to practice with a 3D board, preferably a tournament legal one. And the reason for this is that if you came in the online boom and you've only ever played 2D, moving to 3D is a lot bigger than you might think it would be. I remember my first over the board game after playing online in a while. I dropped a pawn because it was behind a queen and I didn't see it. That would never happen in 2D. And it's never happened again in 3D because my brain has now fully adjusted. So some things you can do to combat this are, I have a puzzle here on my screen. You can do puzzles like this that aren't super easy. They take some calculation. There's a couple of lines that are interesting in there. I like to set them up on a board and really just get my mind in 3D. I personally like to play over Grandmaster games on a 3D board, taking kind of a guess the move approach where I'm really putting myself in the mentality of a game. Another thing you can do that I haven't done is play games with the board online. And so what I mean by this is you go to your favorite online place, you start up a game, but you have a board there, and you actually play it on the board and just translate the moves back to the computer and vice versa. Will it go badly? Quite likely, yes. But your goal, remember, is not to win that game. It's to train your brain to be ready for the 3D experience. Okay, one final tip for pre-tournament prep is to have your clock set ahead of time and understand how your clock works. There's nothing worse than the stress of being at a tournament and being like, it's fine, my opponent will have a clock. And then they don't show up. And suddenly you have to have a clock and it needs to be set up properly. And you're freaking out and panicking. The worst experience I've seen with a clock, and it was so bad because it's my fault and it affected my child. My daughter had a tournament. I thought I had set the clock for 30 minutes, but I don't know my clock as well as I guess I think I do. And I set it for 30 hours. And so there was a big problem, and the TO supposedly fixed it. And then at the beginning of the second round, it was still not fixed. And it just caused her all this additional stress that she did not need. Okay. So that's my sort of pre-tournament prep. Really, in summary for this section, is just play in the tournament. You're going to love it. It's a great part of the experience. Okay. Now let's switch to, you're at the tournament. What are you supposed to do now? What should you focus on? How should you make this a success? Number one for me is food. You need to have the food situation figured out. Luckily, since this is your first tournament, your games most likely will not go to time, but that is assuming you play a classical one. If you play like game 45s, they might all go to time, and the next round might start immediately after your game ends, and this becomes a real challenge. And for this, I think you really want to have food with you. I tend to bring bagels, granola bars, trail mix, things that are sort of easy to eat, aren't incredibly messy. I can step away from the board for a moment, eat if I need to. I can scarf it down in the 3 minutes I have between rounds. But the bottom line is, you might not get a chance to eat whatever food you imagined you were going to eat during the lunch break that you might not actually get. Okay. Closely associated with this is taking care of your body during the games or during this tournament. What that means is eating well. Like, don't cram your body full of horrible things you don't normally eat. Taking care of your body, for me, this means like going for walks. I'm on the older side. It means I need sleep. Like, if you know that you need sleep to be successful when you play chess, put yourself in that situation to be successful. With that, this may mean getting a hotel even if you live within driving distance. Let's say you live an hour away from the event. Yeah, you can drive back and forth, and that's totally fine, but you might find it a better experience if you have the resources to actually stay there. Another thing that I would say with this whole sort of treating your body well is don't do surprising things to your body. Like, if you don't normally drink like a high energy beverage before you play a chess game, don't get up in the morning and be like, oh, I feel a little sluggish. I'm going to grab one of those high energy drinks for the first time in 10 years and scarf one of those down. There's a really good chance your body's not going to do well. For me, I usually have a tea in the morning, and so I try really hard to set my schedule so that I have enough time to get up and to acquire this tea that I'm used to drinking in the morning. It's just, that's the amount of caffeine I put in my brain, and I like to keep that consistent for game days. Okay. Another thing is to treat the games you play as sort of tools for future learning. And so what this means is, first, take really good notation. And what I mean by this is write down all the moves. I guess I shouldn't say really good, but write them down. Write them down as correctly as you can. It's not a bad idea to ask for a picture of your opponent's score sheet. If you explain to them, hey, this is my first tournament, I'm just really not confident in my notation, most likely they'll have no problem showing you theirs, letting you take a quick picture. Let's say you forget a couple of moves. You get excited. You get carried away. You miss 2 moves. It's okay. Skip them, leave a hole, and just start writing new moves. You'll probably be able to fill in the moves that you missed just based on what the position looks like later. My daughter runs into this trap where if she misses 2 moves, she just doesn't write anything else down, and then it's gone. That game that you paid all this money to do and invested all this time in, now this game is gone. And really the goal should be to use these games as tools for future learning, especially since you've already admitted you probably aren't going to win the tournament. Your goal is really just to have this experience. Okay. One last just piece of advice for notation. You're not supposed to put comments on the moves. You're allowed to write down the time, and you're allowed to write down when draws were offered, but you're not supposed to put like exclams and question marks and notes, which would be great. Like what were you thinking? That would be awesome. And then the last thing with your notation, what I do and what I think is a great idea is right after your game, as quickly as you're able to, put down your thoughts and what your ideas were. What I like to do is I immediately enter the game into a Lichess study. And then I go into that study and I just start like free flowing everything I was thinking in that position. And you're going to lose some of it because it was, 2 hours ago in the middle of the game. But I write down things like that move surprised me. Even things like my mood, like, ooh, things were picking up. I felt like maybe I was winning now. I write down some lines that I came up with. And then later, when I have more time, I go into more analysis mode myself with a coach. But then I've got, like, when my coach says, what were you thinking here? If I haven't written it down, there's a good chance I'm just going to be like, I don't know, this is a bad move. But it wasn't just a bad move, right? It wasn't like something popped into your mind and you made a bad move. You had a reason. So write down that reason if you can. It just helps you in the future. Okay, so those are some ideas of what you can do during the actual tournament to be more successful. Now we're going to go over just some random etiquette things that I think people have questions about. I think the biggest one, and this is the one that newer players struggle with so much, is if something weird happens, stop the clock, get a judge. That's what they're there for. The judges are there to help you. And usually they're not going to intervene unless you ask for their help. So I'm going to give you two examples. In one of my recent tournaments, I had someone try to bully me into doing something I didn't think was fair and right. This person came like 20 minutes to the round. That's fine. You're allowed to come late to the round. You lose some of your time. Maybe you went to get that tea you desperately needed. Maybe the parents came up and you looked up your opponent and you started prepping for them. That's all legit. But you come to the round 20 minutes late, you lose 20 minutes on your clock. Well, my opponent tried to say that something hadn't happened right and that we needed to reset the clock to the original time. And he was very adamant about it. So rather than argue, I just kind of went, that's not how that works. And he was like, yes, it is. You need to do this and this. And I just said, okay, hold on. I'll get the judge. Pause the clock. Judge comes over. Of course, the judge says, no, you do not reset the clock. If you're 20 minutes late, you're 20 minutes late. I'm sorry. Boom. Matter solved. I didn't have to stress. I didn't have to have some argument with someone at a tournament. I didn't have to let them bully me. Now, my daughter had a similar experience and it didn't go that well because she didn't understand that she was supposed to get a judge. Her opponent was, she's only 7 and her opponent was like 16 or something. And she checkmated him. Great, game's over. Well, he castled through the checkmate, while in checkmate, through a check, and his king had moved twice already. So my daughter's looking at this and kind of like, what the heck is happening? But instead of calling a judge, it was her first tournament game ever, and she just kind of went, I guess there's some stuff I still have to learn about chess, played on, and lost. So it was a really good lesson for her that the judges are there to help. Call them. If something weird happens, get a judge. Next thing. I like to talk to people before games, but this is a murkier subject. I think really what it comes down to is you need to read the room. Especially people that are not my opponent going into the next round. I feel really fine like walking into the hall, seeing other adults that are sharing my hobby and my interest, right? And so I'll go up to them and just be like, hey, how you doing? How's the tournament going for you? And most of them are happy to talk because they're in the same circumstance. Now, if you see someone with headphones on, don't tap their shoulder and get them to take their headphones on. They're probably trying to get their game face on. If someone doesn't seem like they want to talk to you, that's fine. Maybe they don't. Then just move on. But I think it basically comes down to reading the room. I've heard people say, I don't like to be talked to before chess matches don't do it. I disagree with that at lower levels, and I consider myself there still. I'm in the 1700s. I think talking to other people who share your interest is one of the great things about even playing in these events. So again, read the room a bit. If someone doesn't want you to talk to them, don't do it. Once play starts, though, don't talk to anybody. Don't talk to anyone other than the judge. You'll see every now and then, especially older people, kind of go up and have a quick like, hey, how you doing with somebody? And that's because this was the norm. Like back when I played 20 years ago, people would talk the whole game, and it was really disconcerting. Like a little kid would go up to his coach, start talking to him. They would be pointing at our game. And I'm like, what is happening? Like, it maybe they were just having a friendly conversation, right? That's entirely possible. And maybe the coach was saying, like, what are you doing? Stop messing up that game. Or maybe the coach was like, why did you move your knight there? Move your knight over here, reroute it. Who knows? In other words, talking leaves that room for people to wonder, ooh, is there some sort of collusion happening? Is there some sort of cheating going on? So just don't talk to anyone in the playing hall. You've got after the game to talk to them, but not during the game. Another thing, feel free to get up and walk around, especially during your opponent's turn. This is not rude. Sometimes you need to stretch. Sometimes you just want to reset, like how you're seeing the board. It's totally fine to get up and walk around. My suggestion would be, though, to resist doing it all the time, because the more time you're at the board, the more time you're invested in calculation. Another thing is turn off your phone. I mean, they're going to tell you that already. This is not like some new great strategy I have, but you might be tempted to be like, I'll put it in my pocket. I'll put it on silent mode. It'll be fine. But even if it's on silent mode, like it's going to distract you during the game. It's going to be buzzing. It's going to be beeping. You're going to have in your mind like, ooh, I wonder what that is. Who could be trying to contact me? Could be anything. Also, having your phone off just removes any cloud of cheating, right? Your phone's off. I couldn't be cheating. My phone is off. I personally turned mine off, put it in my bag. If you're playing in a FIDE rated event, they'll let you know. You can't have it on your person at all. It's an instant forfeit if it's on your person. Okay, next one, offering draws. This is kind of a tough one because there's no rules about offering draws, but there seem to be a lot of unwritten rules about offering draws. The big unwritten rule is if you are the lower rated player, the thought is you don't offer many draws. Basically, your opponent, if they're better than you or they're higher rated than you, they'll know when it's a draw. They'll offer you a draw when they're ready to take a draw. Having said that, if a higher rated player offers you a draw, you should probably not take it. I mean, why is this higher rated player offering you a draw? Most likely it's because they think the position is much worse. This should, at a minimum, cause you to really look at the position. I know it can be tempting to say like, oh, I'm going to get a draw with this much higher rated player than me. Boom, I'll take that. That sounds amazing. But resist that temptation. Higher rated players are not super generous. They're not going to offer you draws. Now, I will say this. If you're a lower rated player and you think it's a draw and you want to offer a draw, maybe you're just tired, you want to offer a draw, I say offering a single draw is fine. Once you've offered a draw, though, that's it. Your opponent's most likely going to turn it down if they're higher rated than you, and then you just move on and you wait until they offer you a draw before you offer one back. It is quite annoying to have someone repeatedly offer draws. Do not be that person. And if someone does that to you, again, what do you do when something weird happens in a chess tournament? You call the judge. All right, resigning. This is another big one. Are you obligated to resign? No. Is it an unwritten rule that you should resign when you're losing? Again, no. Especially in lower rated sections, it's really whoever makes the last blunder is the one to lose. So if you make a blunder and then you resign, well, you just took away your opponent's option to make the last blunder. Now, am I saying you should always play to checkmate? No, I'm not saying that. But what I'm saying is you paid to be in this tournament. You traveled to this tournament. You sacrificed a lot, including your time to play in this tournament. If you feel like this position is worth playing out, play it out. I have played against people that are like 1800 who made me mate them. And they made me mate them when I had like a king and 3 connected pass pawns and they had a king on the other side of the board. There was literal no hope other than perhaps this guy will fail to mate me with a queen king. Maybe they'll stalemate me, and they played it out. So I wouldn't suggest that personally, but that's a personal thing. But I would say there are no obligations to resigning. And if someone gets mad at you that you didn't resign fast enough, that's on them. That's not on you. Now, what I will say is this. If you're dead to rights and you take 20 minutes, that's something different, right? Like if there's literally just queen king against king, and you take 20 minutes to move your king, then maybe your opponent's going to be frustrated, and maybe you should rethink whether that was a good use of your time. Remembering that energy is a big part of tournaments and trying to conserve it for the next round when you can. Okay, arriving late is a thing. If your opponent arrives late, don't do any of the possible things going through your mind. One might be like, I got a free win. This is awesome. And then when they show up, you're devastated. You don't get the free win. Another one, you might be like, oh, they're so rude. How could they come late to the game? This is just part of chess. Try not to judge them at all. Just accept that they're late. And I got to say, I love when my opponents are late because I have a time advantage, right? I'm like, okay, cool. So arriving late is a thing. If you arrive late, this is the hard part because it's tempting to get really stressed out about it. Try not to. You're late. So what? You're a little bit down on time. You'll be fine. Post-mortems, and what a post-mortem means is after the game, offering the person you play to go over the game. It's my favorite part. I have found children are usually uninterested in it. They want to go hang with their friends. They're going to go over the game later with their coach anyway. They're not that interested in post-mortems. Some have been, which is great. So my suggestion would be to be open to them, but don't expect them. And I think you're more likely to get them when you lose. When you win, it's tough, right? You're like, hey, you want to go over this game? I'd love to show you how I smashed you, right? Like some people are not into that. They want to just go up to their hotel room, look at the game with their computer, and move on with their lives that way. But for me, I find it incredibly useful to go over games with my opponents. If nothing else, I get to hear their thought process, right? I get to hear like, oh, I was wondering why you did that. Oh, that's why you did that. That makes a lot of sense. So I would encourage you to do them. It can be hard to do one when you lose. You might not be in a good mood, but you're going to learn something useful. Go for them. Okay. This is an iffy one. My suggestion is don't eat at the board. I think you're going to find someone who will eat at the board, and you're going to see just how annoying it is. I consider it to be quite rude and annoying when someone eats at the board. Now, if they eat something completely silent, which is pretty hard to do, and they don't eat it in an annoying way, maybe. But my suggestion would be just step away from the board and eat something if you need to. This is why I say bring some food in your bag, eat it between rounds. But maybe your blood sugar drops and you just have to eat. I would say step away from the board to eat it. Last thing I have for you today is who gets to use whose set. The way it works at a chess tournament is the person playing the black pieces can choose which set is being used. But if you have a set that you love, like it's a really nice set, you can always come early, set up, even if you're using the white pieces. And when your opponent shows up, you can just say, do you mind if we use my set? And if they say, I do mind actually, I want to use mine, you just smile and say, no problem. And you take your set down and they set theirs up. But more likely than not, if you actually bring a good set and your opponent has the normal plastic tournament set, they're going to be very happy to use your set. Okay, so those are my tips today. Hopefully they will make you feel a little bit better about entering your first tournament. I just want to say they are a ton of fun, and I hope you enjoy it. Now, before we leave, I did put up a puzzle for you. This is a game I played just the other day. I was in a bit of time trouble. I couldn't quite figure out how to finish this off. I finally had maneuvered my knight in a decent spot, and so I went here thinking that I was going to force this guy back, and I was quite happy about that. And now I thought I should be able to find some way to finish him off here with like going here or something. And I just couldn't figure it out. And the reason is because that was not the best move. The best move here is actually just to queen. Wait, am I in the right spot here? No, sorry. It's here. No, I was right. So to go here, to queen out. Now when he gets checked, he has to take. Then we go here now and check him. And now everything's covered. And he has to move back to the last rank. And now we just scoop up all of the pieces and win quite easily. I missed this move. I ended up losing this game in an absolute time scramble. And this is the type of puzzle that you can do when you're trying to get ready for your tournament. All right. Well, I hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you next time on Dr. Skull Games.